Custer's movement down Reno Creek was anything but steady. His forces alternated between swift gallops and slower paces, creating an atmosphere charged with energy as they pressed forward. There was almost a celebratory tone, punctuated by a mix of gunfire, laughter, and shouts from the men. Benteen recalled from his scouting, "The last I saw of the column was the Gray Horse Troop at full gallop." He lost sight of them roughly 45 minutes after departing, although others, like Wynne Edgerly, estimated the loss of sight within just 10 minutes. A far more plausible assessment given the rapid pace. Benteen moved quickly, but Custer was even faster. Godfrey corroborated this observation, noting that they could occasionally catch glimpses of Custer's battalion, especially the Gray Horse Troop, advancing rapidly ahead. The march was filled with cheering and sporadic gunfire, underscoring the mix of excitement and tension in the air. Sergeant Daniel Nippy, riding with C Company, echoed this sentiment, stating emphatically, "We went at a gallop," a claim he consistently reiterated. The fervor of the troops reflected their eagerness and determination, setting the stage for the unfolding events that would soon change the course of history. Others, including Private William Slapper, corroborated this, noting that the troops moved with remarkable speed throughout the morning. Interestingly, Captain Henry Blanchard Freeman, who wasn't present until Gibbon's forces arrived on June 27, wrote in his journal that the entire command moved at a gallop down the valley. Although Freeman was not a direct witness to the events, his entry serves as a significant post-battle commentary. Freeman's observations likely stemmed from discussions with officers who had participated in the battle, officers whose recollections were still fresh and unclouded by the debates and historical revisionism that would follow. At that time, the focus was on recounting the raw facts rather than interpreting or second-guessing them. The scouts also provided similar accounts. Little Sioux and the Arikara scout confirmed that the troops moved swiftly, while the Crow scout Curley relayed these observations to General Hugh Scott. These first-hand accounts collectively paint a vivid picture of the rapid advance, underscoring the urgency and momentum that characterized Custer's movements during this pivotal moment. Colonel Tim McCoy, during a battlefield visit in 1919, noted that Custer's column moved at a brisk trot. This aligns with Edgerly's recollection from the officers' meeting on June 24, where there was a strong emphasis on moving quickly. Varnum, in a letter to his father, also remarked that as the regiment rode past abandoned Indian campsites along the Rosebud River, it became evident they were in a hurry to catch the enemy by surprise. As the troops raced forward, some men began to lag behind. This phenomenon would not have occurred if Custer had been advancing at a leisurely pace of 4 miles per hour, as suggested by historians like John Gray. Stragglers would have been able to keep up if the pace had been more relaxed. Given the military context, the length of the campaign, the elusive nature of their adversary, and the careful planning that went into the operation, speed was essential. With their proximity to the village, time was of the essence, and the urgency of their advance reflected the high stakes of the situation they faced. Major General Sir Charles Edward Caldwell, a British colonial soldier, provided a clear military rationale for rapid movements in his treatise Small Wars. He observed that irregular fighters often struggle to maintain vigilant lookout during the night but are highly alert during the day when regular troops are nearby. To catch them off guard, a swift march is essential. Cavalry and mounted infantry, owing to their mobility, are particularly suited for this type of surprise attack. Custer's situation aligns perfectly with Caldwell's insights. While Custer's initial actions ultimately ended in failure, they were tactically sound and consistent with established military principles. For any military operation to succeed, it must adhere to 3 core principles: logic, simplicity, and flow. These principles guide decision-making and strategy, ensuring that operations remain effective and adaptable in the face of challenges. Custer's approach, driven by the urgency of the situation, exemplified these tenets, even as the outcome revealed the complexities of the battlefield. While historical accounts often cite rigid speed metrics, 4 miles per hour for walking, 6 miles per hour for trotting, and 8 miles per hour for galloping, the reality of the battlefield frequently defies such neat categorization. Horses can reach speeds of over 30 miles per hour, making it plausible that such bursts of speed occurred multiple times during the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Modern sources confirm that a horse's speed can vary significantly based on factors such as stride length, body build, and the conditions of the terrain. Gallops can reach up to 30 miles per hour, with some horses potentially exceeding that speed in short bursts. This variability underscores the dynamic nature of cavalry operations, where the capabilities of the horses and the urgency of the situation could lead to rapid movements that are not easily quantified by standard metrics. Eyewitness accounts often clash regarding the exact pace of Custer's advance down Reno Creek, but the number of soldiers who fell behind during the challenging 10-mile journey provides a compelling argument for a faster pace than traditionally believed. Members of Benteen's command remarked on the condition of their horses after the strenuous march, highlighting the physical toll of the journey. While Reno's unit reported no stragglers, Custer's battalion saw 9 men fall behind, scattered along the creek and the bluffs. Notably, Sergeant Neep attributed his role as a messenger to the struggles of Sergeant George August Finkel's horse to keep up. What is less well known is that several RE scouts also lagged behind. Strikes the Lodge, Rushing Bull, Soldier Bull, White Eagle, and Red Wolf all fell back, unable to maintain the pace of the advancing troops. These accounts illustrate the intense pressure faced by both the soldiers and their horses, further emphasizing the rapidity of Custer's advance during this critical moment. Aside from the occasional gunfire and laughter from the inexperienced soldiers, little is known about the journey from the divide to Custer and Reno's arrival at the Flats, a relatively undistinguished stretch of Creek Valley. Before reaching these flats, the valley's most notable feature was a morass located about 7.5 miles from the top of the divide. Custer likely bypassed this area around 12:43 p.m., as no accounts from either Reno's or Custer's columns mention stopping there. Just beyond the morass, the troops encountered the upper end of an abandoned Indian encampment, likely the same one referenced by the Cheyenne warrior Wooden Leg as the Great Medicine Creek Camp. This site, where the Hunkpapa Sioux had once camped, was situated about 1 mile west of the morass. From this point, the distance to the Little Bighorn was approximately 5 miles. The Indian encampment itself stretched 2 to 3 miles toward the river, serving as a crucial landmark in the unfolding events of the day. Shortly after reaching the eastern edge of the abandoned village, Custer's troops discovered a lone teepee with a dead Cheyenne warrior inside. Contrary to popular belief, this teepee was not located near Benteen's emergence point onto Reno Creek but was farther down the valley. Custer's forces continued their rapid advance, reaching the flats about 2 miles from the river. By this time, it was around 12:57 p.m., and Custer was signaling Reno to cross over to his side of the creek. Let's take a moment to explore the unfolding events. As the 7th Cavalry advanced up Davis Creek and approached the divide, key landmarks became increasingly murky, with few identified with full certainty. This confusion also extends to the 2 halts made by the regiment and the significance of the Crow's Nest in relation to the divide. Their movement down Reno Creek revealed not only a marshy area but also the intriguing presence of the so-called lone teepee, adding to the complexity of the landscape they were navigating. What we can confidently assert is that Custer observed the vast Native American village from at least 1, and possibly 2, vantage points. From atop the Crow's Nest, Fred Gerard reported seeing a moving dark mass, followed by clouds of dust, clear signs of a large camp nearby. He noted, "The camp we had found was the smaller one, on the way to a larger camp downstream, leading to the belief that the Indians had scattered." This notion of the camp breaking up and stampeding added a layer of tension to the unfolding scenario. Bruce Liddick referenced another small camp of around 60 lodges, mentioning Lieutenant Varnum as the one who informed Custer of its presence. However, it was noted that this smaller camp was observed near the lone teepee rather than within the Little Bighorn Valley itself. Some accounts, including Charles Brady's Indian Fights and Fighters, suggested that upon learning of Custer's approach, this smaller camp, aware of their disadvantage, packed up hastily and fled down the valley. 60 lodges, when moving quickly, might have created the illusion of a much larger force retreating. However, this theory raises several red flags. How would this supposed village know they were no match for Custer's troops? There is no solid evidence supporting the existence of such a camp, nor do Varnum's writings confirm any sighting of it. Moreover, Native American sources do not indicate any early warning of Custer's presence. In fact, Sioux and Cheyenne accounts consistently assert that the first sighting of Custer came from individual riders rushing into the village just before Reno's assault. Any group located 2 to 3 miles away would likely have alerted the larger village much earlier. The assumption that the soldiers had been detected and that fleeing Indians were heading off to warn the main camp is a common interpretation. However, we learn little more about this alleged warning as we proceed down Reno Creek. This ambiguity underscores the complexities of the situation and the challenges of piecing together an accurate narrative of the events that unfolded. Varnum, for his part, mentioned nothing about the sighting, neither during the Reno inquiry nor in his book, Varnum. When asked about a village on the right bank of the Little Bighorn during the inquiry, he assumed the reference pertained to the area leading toward the river along Reno Creek. His only relevant comment involved spotting an old teepee and part of another one a mile from where Reno crossed, which was far from the alleged 60 Lodge village. As Custer advanced down the northern side of Reno Creek in Reno along the southern bank, the first terrain feature they encountered was the marsh around 12:43 p.m. Shortly thereafter, the column reached the general vicinity of the teepee, located 4 to 4.5 miles east of where Reno crossed the Little Bighorn. Meanwhile, Benteen, emerging from No Name Creek, came upon the marsh and paused to water his horses. Historians estimate that in 1876, the marsh lay about a quarter-mile west of where No Name and Reno Creeks merged. No such water feature exists today, although one can be found near the South Fork's entry into Reno Creek. From this point, John Gray estimated the distance to the lone teepee to be about 3/4 of a mile, while Roger Darling argued that the distance ranged between 1.4 and 2.4 miles. Distance and time appeared fluid for those present at the battle, as many accounts vary significantly in their estimates. For instance, Luke Hare claimed that he pointed out some Indians to Custer, who then ordered his scouts forward. When they hesitated, Custer instructed them to dismount. Hare placed this event 200 yards from an Indian teepee and 5 miles from the river. If that were true, it would align with the eastern lone teepee location. Shortly thereafter, Adjutant Cook delivered Custer's attack order to Reno. Hare's assertion that Reno reached the river in 20 to 25 minutes suggests an implausibly fast speed of about 15 miles per hour, given the challenging terrain and creek crossings involved. This inconsistency highlights the difficulties in accurately recounting the sequence of events during the battle. More realistically, if the teepee were indeed 2 miles from the river, a brisk trot could fit the 20-minute timeframe suggested by Hare. However, Hare wasn't alone in his miscalculations. Benteen also made errors. In a letter to his wife on July 4, he wrote that they had ridden 6 or 7 miles before coming upon a burning teepee containing the body of a gorgeously arrayed Indian. The actual distance was about 3.3 miles, making Benteen's estimate somewhat more accurate than Hare's. During the Reno inquiry, Benteen described encountering a sergeant with a message after riding another mile, followed by meeting trumpeter Martini with Lieutenant Cook's message a little further on. When these distances were totaled, they suggested an improbable 9.5 miles from the marsh. Edgerly's and Godfrey's estimates of the distance from the burning teepee to the river also varied but did not fare much better. This inconsistency in measurements underscores the challenges faced by the soldiers in accurately recalling their movements and distances during the chaos of battle. The notion of an eastern location for the teepee falls apart when considering the increasing number of Native American sightings in the valley. A distance of 4.5 miles proved too vast, with the rugged terrain significantly obstructing views. Custer's scouts, including Lieutenant Varnum, strategically positioned themselves on the elevated southern side of Reno Creek. From these vantage points, Varnum could peer into the valley and reported spotting more Native Americans than he had ever seen before. However, the river's bends and the dense timber along the left bank made it impossible to obtain a full view of the village without descending to the valley floor. Gerard, stationed near the teepee area, claimed to have observed fleeing natives, a statement that raises further concerns about the accuracy of these sightings. Bruce Liddick suggested that the abandoned village stretched 2 miles long. While this might be plausible, the idea that the actual lone teepee was located at the village's upper end remains less convincing. The discrepancies in these accounts highlight the challenges faced by Custer's scouts in accurately identifying and interpreting the movements of Native American forces. The combination of difficult terrain and varying eyewitness perspectives contributed to the confusion and uncertainty that plagued the regiment's reconnaissance efforts. As historians continue to piece together these events, The conflicting reports about the tepee's location and the sightings of fleeing natives underscore the complexity of the battlefield dynamics. Understanding these nuances is crucial in evaluating the decisions made by Custer and his men, as well as the broader implications for the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Join us as we delve deeper into these conflicting accounts, exploring how terrain, vantage points, and human perception shaped the unfolding of one of history's most infamous battles. A glance at topographical maps reveals that the Reno Creek Valley remains open for miles, narrowing only as it approaches Reno's Creek crossing. The bluffs and cliffs north of the lone tepee site make a clear view of the valley unlikely. Crow Scout Curley's account of observing the Sioux from a high bluff through binoculars, while compelling, presents several issues. The bluffs he described are situated further north than the supposed location of the tepee, and the timeline he provided does not align seamlessly with other accounts. Curley's interviews spanned several decades, with figures like Walter Camp and General Hugh Scott documenting his stories. Despite the detailed nature of Curley's recollections, many of his claims lead to dead ends, casting doubt on their reliability. Other Crow Scouts, such as Goes Ahead and Harry Moccasin, did not report sightings of distant bluffs or describe the challenging terrain that Curley did. This discrepancy raises questions about the consistency and accuracy of Curley's observations. The conflicting reports highlight the difficulties in reconstructing the exact movements and sightings during the Battle of the Little Bighorn. While Curley's detailed account adds depth to our understanding, the lack of corroboration from other scouts suggests that some of his observations may have been influenced by time, memory, or misinterpretation of the terrain. As historians continue to piece together these events, the inconsistencies in eyewitness accounts underscore the complexity of the battlefield dynamics. The combination of difficult terrain, varying vantage points, and the chaos of battle made accurate observation and reporting a significant challenge for those involved. Understanding these nuances is crucial for evaluating the decisions made by Custer and his men, as well as the broader implications for the battle's outcome. The discrepancies between different scouts' accounts not only highlight the fog of war but also emphasize the importance of critical analysis in historical research. Join us as we delve deeper into these conflicting narratives, exploring how terrain, perspective, and human perception shaped the events of one of history's most infamous battles. By examining the diverse accounts and their underlying factors, we gain a more comprehensive and nuanced understanding of the Battle of the Little Bighorn and the men who fought in it. It seems likely that any such observations occurred closer to the river, requiring much less effort. There is a strong consensus that Girard was with Hare on a knoll rather than on the bluffs, though accounts vary regarding its exact size and location. The knoll was reportedly positioned between 50 and 200 yards to the right of the lone tepee. In 1922, shortly before his passing, Giovanni Martini, a retired Army sergeant who served as the trumpeter for H Company, recounted, "Girard, the interpreter, rode up this knoll, and while observing the dust clouds in the valley, spotted a group of Indians fleeing between the troops and the river. He turned in his saddle and shouted to Custer, 'Here are your Indians, running like devils.'" Martini's recollections surfaced 46 years after the battle, raising questions about the accuracy of his memories. The significant passage of time may have influenced his account, leading to potential inaccuracies or embellishments. This emphasizes the challenge of relying on later recollections when reconstructing historical events, particularly in the chaotic context of the Battle of the Little Bighorn. As we delve further into these accounts, it is essential to critically evaluate the reliability of sources and the implications of memory on our understanding of this pivotal moment in history. By examining these narratives, we can gain deeper insights into the events that transpired and the experiences of those who lived through them. Despite this, Girard himself confirmed seeing the village teepees and horses, estimating that the Sioux were about 3 miles away, to the left in Lee Valley. However, it seems implausible that anyone could have seen the Indian settlement from the bluffs near the traditionally accepted location of the lone tepee, including Varnum, who was riding on the high bluffs to the south. A critical piece of evidence against the eastern tepee site came from an unexpected source. W. Donald Horn, a Custer historian and collector, frequently visited the Little Bighorn battlefield. During one of these visits, he met with a local farmer, Jack Connor, who owned land along Reno Creek. Connor shared a fascinating story with Horn about finding a piece of burnt hide while plowing near the base of Cactus Knoll. Local history suggested that a burial teepee had been positioned there, which was burned before Custer's arrival. This account adds an intriguing layer to the historical narrative, raising questions about the location of the teepees and the events leading up to the battle. The evidence from Connor not only challenges the prevailing theories but also emphasizes the importance of local knowledge and historical context in understanding the complexities of the Battle of the Little Bighorn. As we continue to explore these findings, we gain deeper insights into the dynamics of the battlefield and the various factors that influenced the outcomes of this significant confrontation. This discovery adds significant weight to the notion that Cactus Knoll might actually be the location of Girard's Knoll. Further corroboration came from George Austin, a respected Custer historian, who recounted a trip along Reno Creek with Mr. I. J. O'Donnell and John Berkman, Custer's former orderly. During this excursion, Berkman pointed out the location of the teepee, and Austin later found charred remains, likely buffalo hide, on a nearby knoll, approximately 3/4 of a mile from the river. These findings not only strengthen the argument for the location of Girard's Knoll but also underscore the importance of collaborative research and local knowledge in piecing together the historical landscape of the Battle of the Little Bighorn. As we continue to examine these connections, we gain deeper insights into the events and dynamics that shaped this pivotal moment in history. The discovery of burnt hide in the same general area by two independent parties lends credibility to the idea that Cactus Knoll and Girard Knoll are one and the same. Additionally, Connor wrote a letter to Horn that included a hand-drawn map, indicating that the distance from his house to Little Horn Ford was about 1.7 miles. He noted that the distance from the teepee site he had shown Horn was roughly the same. These findings not only strengthen the argument for the location of Girard's Knoll but also underscore the importance of collaborative research and local knowledge in piecing together the historical landscape of the Battle of the Little Bighorn. As we continue to examine these connections, we gain deeper insights into the events and dynamics that shaped this pivotal moment in history. He speculated that the lone teepee was positioned near this site, and the knoll Girard ascended could have been Cactus Hill, where he observed the fleeing Indians. Many accounts reference the burning of the teepee, with some claiming that Custer ordered it to be set on fire. This location also places Benteen in the vicinity later that day, around 2:35 p.m. The details surrounding the teepee and its burning contribute to the ongoing discussions about the events leading up to the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Understanding these nuances is crucial for piecing together the complex interactions and decisions made by Custer and his men during this pivotal moment in history. One compelling detail supporting the eastern teepee site is the identification of a warrior named Old She-Bear as the deceased person found on the scaffold. Old She-Bear was known to be a Lakota warrior, although some reports suggest that a Cheyenne warrior by the same name was killed while fighting George Crook, which would be an extraordinary coincidence. The Old She-Bear found in the teepee is thought to have been either Hunkpapa or Sans Arc. This ambiguity surrounding the identity of Old She-Bear raises important questions about the accounts of the battle and the individuals involved. As we continue to explore these narratives, we will gain a deeper understanding of the complex tapestry of cultures and conflicts that characterized the Battle of the Little Bighorn. According to some accounts, Old She-Bear was prepared for burial by Old Eagle, a Sans Arc, and Two Bear, also known as Three Bear, a Mini-Kanju warrior who later succumbed to injuries sustained near Reno Hill on June 25. If the death teepee was situated that far east, it may suggest the presence of a Hunkpapa warrior, as they were the last in the line of march for the Indians. If Old She-Bear had been from the Sans Arc or Cheyenne tribes, it would be more likely for him to be found in the western teepee, closer to where the Sans Arc and Cheyenne had camped by the river. This raises important questions about the identity of the deceased and the circumstances surrounding their burial, shedding light on the complex interplay of tribal affiliations and movements during this critical period. This placement raises important questions about the significance of the Eastern Teepee. Custer scholar Richard Hardorf also expressed skepticism regarding the Cheyenne Old She-Bear narrative. In a 1913 interview with Two Moons, a Cheyenne chief, it was claimed that the body actually belonged to the daughter of a Sioux chief, rather than a warrior. Hardorf posited that the deceased was, in fact, Little Wolf, the brother of Chief Circling Bear, a leader of the Sans Arc. These conflicting accounts highlight the complexities surrounding the identity of the deceased and the narratives that have emerged over time. Understanding these nuances is crucial for gaining insight into the cultural dynamics and historical context of the Battle of the Little Bighorn. These varying accounts highlight the complexities surrounding the identities of the individuals involved in the battle and the interpretations of their significance. As we continue to explore these narratives, we will gain a clearer understanding of the cultural dynamics and historical implications of the events at the Little Bighorn. Little Wolf died from a gunshot wound at the Battle of the Rosebud and was later laid to rest in a funeral lodge that soldiers from F Company burned as Custer's advancing column approached. It is important to note that the Cheyenne did not typically place their dead on scaffolds like the Sioux. Instead, they buried their deceased in caves when available or placed the bodies on the ground in secluded locations, wrapping them in blankets or skins and covering them with stones. Only in rare cases, when no other options were available, would they resort to using platforms or tree branches for burials. This cultural practice highlights the distinct traditions surrounding death and burial among different Native American tribes, illustrating the profound respect for the deceased and the importance of proper burial rites. Understanding these customs is crucial in appreciating the complexities of the relationships between the Cheyenne, Sioux, and the U.S. military during this tumultuous period in history. When Little Wolf died, no one anticipated that soldiers would soon be marching through the area. Further evidence supporting the idea that Girard's Knoll and the teepee were closer to the river comes from Red Bear, an Arikara scout. As the scouts rode ahead of the main column and reached the teepee, they paused and began circling it, striking the structure with their whips. This action indicates a sense of urgency and caution, suggesting that the scouts were keenly aware of their surroundings and the potential presence of hostiles. Red Bear's observations reinforce the notion that the teepee's location was strategically significant, adding another layer to the complex dynamics of the battlefield. As we continue to explore these accounts, we gain deeper insights into the movements of Custer's forces and the interactions between the scouts and the terrain, ultimately enriching our understanding of the events that unfolded during the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Custer quickly intervened, chastising the scouts for stopping and insisting they proceed directly to the Sioux village. According to Red Bear, Custer turned off to the right with his men about 50 yards beyond the lone teepee, while Girard continued riding with the scouts. Red Bear's account clearly suggests that the teepee was much closer to the Little Bighorn River than the traditional lone teepee site, which was located about 4.5 miles away. Lieutenant Hare, who was leading the advance, recalled seeing 40 to 50 hostiles between the troops and the Little Bighorn. These Native Americans likely spotted the soldiers and quickly disappeared from view. While this sighting doesn't provide specifics about the main or secondary villages or the river bluffs Custer was preparing to cross, it does confirm that there were indeed hostiles in the Reno Creek Valley, closer to the river. This encounter highlights the tense atmosphere and the ever-present threat posed by the Native American forces during the advance. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for piecing together the broader context of the battle and the challenges faced by Custer and his men as they navigated through hostile territory. Ultimately, despite its long history and the countless references to it, the traditional lone teepee, if it ever existed, seems irrelevant to the events that unfolded. It had no significant role in the battle, in Custer's orders, or in the movement of the 7th Cavalry. It's possible the eastern lone teepee simply stood alone as the soldiers passed by, but for all practical purposes, it didn't play a meaningful part in the Little Bighorn saga.